Guys, thank you so much for downloading True Sports Physical Therapy Podcast. Today's guest is really out of our usual and with really good reason. It's a major problem within our profession of how to afford student loans, but then how to afford the day-to-day, especially when you're working at an outstanding sports clinic, which maybe can't pay you as much as the lawyers and the doctors of the world. And what we do today is we make sense of how to solve for that problem. How to save for retirement, how to save for your everyday, what to do about cars, whether to buy a house, whether to lease or rent a house. We cover it all. And today's guest is Elliot Pepper. Elliot Pepper is a certified financial planner, and he's also a CPA. So he covers all things, both investment and tax strategies, puts it all together. What you're going to hear most today is the way he assesses his clients to understand their psychology of investment and what it is they want out of their financial lives, how to save for it, and how to fund it. So it was an awesome conversation, something I learned a ton about. Elliot got his bachelor's in accounting from the University of Maryland, College Park, the best institution in the entire country. He also got his master's in tax at University of Maryland, Baltimore, and that coincidentally was paid for by his employer. We get into some of those nuances. His company is called Northbrook Financial. Please look them up. There is so much outstanding advice that he provides. He really has your best interests at heart. So look him up, Elliot Pepper, Northbrook Financial. Without further ado, here is my conversation all about how to be financially successful. Welcome back to the True Sports Physical Therapy Podcast. Elliot Pepper, a dear friend, an outstanding financial advisor. We need you to solve this major issue for us in our profession, because our profession is upside down and backwards as it pertains to the finances. Okay. So I want to start with kind of sketching out a picture for you of what it currently looks like. A 26, 27-year-old doctor of physical therapy graduates graduate school. They're just jumping into the outpatient physical therapy world. They're going to make about $75,000 to $85,000 a year. The problem is, here's where we're backwards. We just spent between $100,000 to $200,000 on our education. What is my first move in order to take my, let's call it 80 grand, and somehow get rid of this giant burden that is student debt?
It's a great question. Thanks for having me on, Yoni. It's great to be here.
Thanks for being here, Pep.
I think an awesome way to maybe think about this is related to the industry itself. Think about what you and what other sports PTs are doing for their patients that are coming in. There's typically some issue, something happened, some sort of injury happened, and there's a goal to get back to whatever status, take an elite athlete performing at the highest level in their sport. But then they come meet with you, another PT, and they're taking relatively smaller baby steps, maybe engaging in exercise and activities that don't seem connected to the bigger picture of getting back to that elite status, but they're fundamentally important in order to get there.
You're going to inch your way back.
Exactly. And so take that mindset and apply it to your finances. I think it's a beautiful way to look at it. So let's think about it. We have a recent grad, just finished school. It's a lot of work. It's a big time commitment. It's a big financial commitment. They're coming out, they're making 80 grand. They're sitting on $150,000, $200,000 of debt. Where do you go first? How do you even get started?
Pepper, that's my question.
Yeah. So I know I'm framing.
Okay.
Here's what you do. This is my approach. And I think you'll find this theme throughout the discussion, because really, I think it relates to all the different parts of your financial life cycle. Is find your balance. So I like giving an analogy of a barbell approach to everything. There's going to be the TikToks and YouTubers of the world who are telling you to go crazy and invest, max out your 401k, buy Bitcoin and a yacht. And then there's going to be people who tell you cut up your credit cards, just only pay in cash. So finding balance is critically important. What do I recommend? I recommend, as a starting point, you've got your first job. First thing, think about future Dr. PT and find out if you have access to a 401k plan and put in at least as much to get an employer match. That's your long-term side of the barbell. Then you open up a high yield savings account and you're going to prioritize socking away between 3 and 6 months of your monthly expenses there. That's the short-term side. That's the today Dr. PT side of the barbell. It's critically important to do that. Once you have that balance set up, all the other things you need to do, managing how we pay off our student loans, saving up for a house, investing for a big vacation, whatever it's going to be, all those things will fit within that framework. But I think if you get those two sides set up, a good foundation for way down the road, but also not forgetting that today is today and you got to live in the present and manage the present. That's your starting point.
Okay, so long term is our 401k. That's when I'm 65, done working, let's say. I'm saving up for that. Then shorter term is like your rainy day fund, your 3 to 6 months. You're opening an account, and I walk into Truist, Bank of America, First Trust National, whatever, and I set up a savings account.
You're going to set up good. I'm glad that you referenced these other banks because, like everything in finance, the devil gets in the details.
Yeah.
You walk into one of those banks, you open up a free checking account, and that's where you're going to have your direct deposit from your first job coming in.
That's my everyday.
That's your everyday ins and outs.
Okay.
These banks don't typically offer what's called a high yield savings account. High yield means that basically the account pays you interest. It pays you more than what a checking account pays. You typically have to look to an online bank for that solution. Now, as long as it is FDIC insured, is not charging you any fees, and you can easily link it to your checking account, those are kind of my 3 check the box items that it's a legit high yield savings account.
Okay, so we have 3 accounts we have to set up. I get my job offer from True Sports. It says we offer a 401k. I want to dive into what that means exactly in a heartbeat. We offer a 401k. We offer a match at 3%. Great. That's one account that I need to set up. Second account is my long-term high yield savings account. High yield means it pays a higher amount of interest. Money's just going to sit in there for a long time. I want to do that with an online bank. And then my third account is my checking account. That's what I'm going to operate my daily stuff out of, my daily finances out of. That I can go to any bank, like the banks I just mentioned, and set that up. Why do I need an online FDIC long-term savings account? Why don't I just put that also in my Truist, let's say?
It's a great question because of inflation. It's been in the news a lot recently, but when your money is just sitting there and not growing, you're actually losing money because think about it. The cost of everything goes up over time. So what do you want to do? I'm telling you that you need to keep some amount of money easily accessible for emergencies, rainy days, whatever. So your checking account's not going to pay you any interest, but it's not there to grow or to be your rainy day fund. It's just there to facilitate the ins and outs. The high yield savings is not meant to be used regularly, but if you need it in a snap, you can easily get it. So it's going to sit there. You want to at least keep up with inflation if you can.
So what percent am I looking for in my high yield?
So these rates will vary. You're typically now, as we're recording in July of 2025, you're looking at rates anywhere between 3 and 4%. I think right now on my own, I'm getting 3.6% in my high yield savings.
And I can't get that at Truist?
No. Truist, I don't believe so. Typically, the way I think about it, if there's a physical branch location, the bigger big name banks are less likely to offer a high yield savings option.
Because they can't afford to give that amount of interest because they're managing this other crap like your brick and mortars.
Exactly. Think about a sports PT who might do virtual only versus in person. So the in-person PT has extra expenses to keep the lights on. These banks work the same way. An online bank doesn't have to keep the lights on. They just have to keep the servers running.
Okay. Fascinating. So do you have like a preferred online option that you recommend clients go to?
It's a great, so I'll spit off the most common ones that I'm
just spit off the best one.
The best ones. I will spit them off and then I'll give a little caveat. Okay. So Marcus by Goldman Sachs, Ally Bank, Betterment, American Express, and Discover Card. Those are 5 banks, even though you think credit card when you hear American Express and Discover Card, that offer high yield savings accounts. What people often do, and this is something that I like to say, I've said it before, and I want to say it again on the True Sports podcast. Imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. So don't let yourself get hung up on, well, it's 3.8 there, but it's 3.6 here, and maybe I should be moving back and forth or just open up 2 accounts because I don't know. Just do something. The right thing to do is to get a reasonable rate that's keeping up with inflation. the effort that you put into growing your investments, that other side of the barbell, that's where you want to be a little bit more nuanced. This money's not here to make you rich. This money is here to keep up with inflation and cover you for a rainy day. So
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. You didn't mention Capital One. Why did I used to hear Capital One was like the place to go for high yield savings?
yeah, okay, that's very good. So Capital One did not, I guess, top into my brain as the top 5. They do offer a high yield savings. I will say that there was, I think they lag a little bit lower than the other names that I mentioned because they do have physical branches. Having said that, there is a lot of utility to simplicity. So again, back to the imperfect action better than perfect inaction. If you're at Capital One, that's where you're opening up your checking account. It's not a bad place to go. However, disclaimer, okay, important, listen up. This was actually in the news. Capital One got into a little bit of trouble with some of the way they were pitching and marketing their savings accounts, where people thought they were in the high yield savings account, but they were not. Capital One can be a little tricky that way, where one of their savings accounts doesn't pay you anything, just like the Truist, Wells Fargo, PNCs of the world. But then they do have what's called Capital One 360 Performance Savings. That's the one you want to be in. So if you're going to go down that route, you do need to just make sure that you're in their actual high yield, not in the fake high yield.
Okay. That brings to mind a separate question, because those nuances is where I see the value of a CFP, a certified financial planner, which you are one, right? Of a CPA who can help me on the tax side, stuff like that. So I'm taking this first job, or I'm just out of grad school. Do I need to find a guy like you? And how do I discern who the right fit for me is?
It's a great question. So I think that at its core, personal finance is fundamentally simple, but has been made artificially complicated, in my view. And I get it. There are incentives to keeping things around money more complicated because there's a business opportunity for people who can keep that information more opaque, for guys like me.
Yeah.
But then you have guys like me who do want to share content and be as helpful as possible. So I think it definitely is helpful for, especially, you went to school for PT, not for finance. So lean into what you already invested in. Grow your foundational wealth that way. Be smart about it by working with an advisor. So I would recommend reaching out to someone, but people have to be pretty careful about this. These are, again, just like I dropped FDIC insured, no fee, and easy access. When you're working with an advisor, first and foremost, you want to be working with someone who is a fiduciary. This is a legal term, but incredibly important. It means that they are bound to put your interests before their own.
How do I know if someone's a fiduciary?
You ask them.
That's it.
You ask them. You can also check most fiduciaries are going to disclose this on their website. You can also, pretty much every financial advisor out there is going to be registered with some sort of regulatory body. So you can check on the CFP website, NAPFA, XYPN. These are all names that I'm dropping. These are organizations where fee-only financial advisors can be registered. And so they're vetted there. So, don't take my word for it, but you can see that I'm on the CFP website. But that's the first place to go.
That avoids you like giving a bunch of money to someone and then all of a sudden his phone number changes and they're gone.
Exactly.
Like, it gives you that safety net. Okay. And it means you technically have my best interest at heart. So you put my money into something that wasn't fiduciary safe, let's say, that wasn't in my best interest, then I have some type of recourse to say, hey, this wasn't a good investment. You were supposed to have my best interest. So you're on the hook for that, or there's some type of security, right?
Yeah.
Am I getting that right?
Yep. And a good way to just ask a potential advisor is ask them, how do you get paid? How do you get paid, pal? That's a great way to look. If they are telling you that they are fee only, meaning you're paying a fixed fee or an hourly rate, and you're paying me for my brain, my experience, to give you advice to act on. So that is aligning interests. If they're being paid based off of a commission or a kickback model where, well, if you invest in this financial product, it's good for you. But what I'm not telling you is that I'm going to get a 20% commission off it, as opposed to maybe putting you into a Vanguard index fund where I'm not going to be getting a commission. So ask the advisor how they get paid.
Okay. So let me ask you this. How do you get paid?
Very good question. So we get paid through two different ways at Northbrook Financial. We get paid directly as fee-only advisors. So that exists both within our CPA business, because we are accountants, we do taxes for people, as well as financial planning, just giving people objective fee-only financial advice. So you're going to pay a fixed fee to work with us. It is typically structured as an annual fee that we chop up into monthly increments.
And that's a flat rate. Doesn't matter how much money I'm giving you. Doesn't matter what we're investing in. I'm paying you X amount of dollars per month for you to be my guy.
That's correct.
Okay.
The third way, so there's 3 revenue streams at Northbrook for our business. So I mentioned the first 2, which are very just fee only. The other way is through our investment management services. This is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated. And we purposely don't like to lead with that service, because I want clients to understand what you're paying for when you're paying someone to manage your investments. And the way we get paid on that is we charge a percentage of the assets that are being managed. And I think this is just also a very fundamentally important concept for a recent grad who's going out in the world and trying to be smart with their money. Most of the free financial content that you will take in through social media is purposely designed to be short, condensed, and make it feel like this is the only way. But think about the incentives. Going back to the fiduciary, a lot of times the incentive is just to get eyeballs and clicks on a video. It might not make sense for you. So what we tell people is your investment strategy, what you're actually doing with your investments, needs to be aligned with your financial plan. And for most people, especially young people just getting started, you can DIY that investment strategy. I think it is helpful to pay a fiduciary advisor a flat fee to give you the education to know what you need to do. But at the end of the day, you can do it. If you make an informed decision and you're like, Elliot, this is great, but like, I ain't doing this. I'm not interested in it, or I don't think I'm going to actually follow through with the important steps that are needed to maintain the investment strategy, then you can say, okay, I accept that there's an additional fee for that, and I'll do that. So that's when we're working with clients. We do financial planning, and then we get to a point where we say, okay, this is what you should be doing in your Roth, in your 401k, your brokerage account, and you need to do X, Y, and Z every year to maintain the proper balance. What do you want to do? And if they want to DIY it, great. If they want to hire Northbrook to do it, then we will happily do that for you.
Okay. And so if I opt in to the Northbrook plan, you're going to charge me a percentage on assets under management, which is a fancy term for how much money I give you.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
What percentage is that? Like, how do I shop that around?
Yep. Very good. So I'll give you ours and then general comments about how it all works. So we charge and this is the way it's typically kind of messaged. It's an annual management fee. So it's a percentage of the value of your investment. So if you're giving $10,000 to be invested, the investment manager is going to take a percentage off of that. We charge 1% annually on balances up to $1 million. And then we start to scale down to 0.75, 0.5, 0.25. So that is the way our fee structure works. I believe that is standard and competitive within the industry. And I always challenge people, maybe because I'm a business person and I want to, make sure you kind of differentiate myself. But anyone who's charging more than 1%, I think you need to have a very detailed discussion about what services, what value they're providing. So for us, some people might say we charge 1.5%, but we do your financial planning also. Okay, so then what we charge for separately, they are including. You just want to be, again, you got to be an informed consumer. So you want to ask, but again, it's 1%. That's the way it's broken down.
Okay, and then it's 1% assets under management. The 10,000 I give you turns into 20,000. It's 1% of the 20,000 because now like the pot has grown. So that's what I'm paying on. It's not my original investment.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, and it comes down, vice versa. Same thing. Okay,
exactly. So it brings a little bit of an alignment of interest. There could be potential conflicts, though. I look at the fee-only model as the purest conflict-free option. Assets under management can create conflicts because at the end of the day, the investment advisor wants more assets under management.
They want more, but that means they want your investment to grow.
Right. But they also might discourage certain kind of your broader personal financial picture. Like maybe you really, really want to buy a vacation house or take the family on a crazy vacation.
Yep.
that might dictate pulling from investments, where within your financial plan, it's perfectly fine. It's not going to screw up your retirement, and you got to live your life, but that can create a disincentive.
So how do you get around that as the consumer?
Yeah, so I think it is very hard, and the best thing you could do is be as informed as possible. So again, I believe you either hire a fiduciary advisor that you pay a flat fee for first, get yourself self-educated as much as possible, and just know what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
I find at the end of the day, if the vibe between an investment advisor and their client seems confrontational, you probably shouldn't be working with that advisor anyway. Most advisors are good people trying to do the right thing. And so as long as that relationship and that trust and transparency is there, I think it works well to still work with an advisor, even if they're charging under the AUM model.
Okay, so just as like a little bit of background, the reason I found this world of financial advising, I had an accountant who helped me get started with my business. So he had some shoulder issues. He's on a table. I'm working for some schmuck, and he says to me, he's like, "Hey man, like you're pretty good at this. You're probably going to start your own company at some point. Here's my card." And then like 8 years later, I called the guy and I'm like, "Hey, I'm starting my own. I don't know anything about business. I know about shoulders. How to, help me." And then within like 3 months or so, he's like, "Dude, you need a financial advisor." I'm like, "Rick, I don't have any finances. So why do I need a financial advisor?" But he gave me a guy's name. It was not Elliot Pepper. And I went to meet that guy. I met that guy, interviewed him. By the way, very similar to this. And you make a good point. You already made the point a number of times, which is ask questions, and ask questions from a standpoint of you are 5 years old. And if you don't know something, ask them what the hell it means. Like, what is a CFP? How does that compare to CFA? How does that compare to a public accountant? What are the different services? What is your fee structure? What does that mean? Like, and then what is a 401k? What is a simple? What is an IRA? I didn't know any of those things. I still don't know those things really. So constantly ask. That's important. I then took his recommendation, met with the financial advisor, and then I'm like, I don't trust anyone. Let me go meet with others. And so I interviewed like 5 of you guys. Turns out the one who I meshed with the best talked to me as if I was going to make money, as if I was a valuable consumer. The other guys from bigger banks, bigger investment houses looked at me like I was dust, because I was. And I'm like, screw that. I don't trust them. My accountant says I need a guy. I'm going to go with that original guy. That's how I ended up with my guy. But that's a worthwhile story, because that's what you got to do. You got to go through this interview process and ask them how they get paid, what they're going to do, what it's going to look like in 5 years, et cetera. And if you're talking to the right guy and you're earning that trust, he's going to be grilling you on what is your risk tolerance? How many kids do you have? How many kids do you want to have? Maybe you don't want to have kids. What's your vacation appetite? What are the big expenses, so that you guys can see if there's a fit? It's almost like dating.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't underscore that enough. It's so important, and really, it's important for anything you're going to do. I think it gets compounded in the world of personal finance. You know why? Because personal leads that two-word term, right? And so it's incredibly important. What I tell a prospective client when we're meeting is, we kind of sit down. It's time for me to shut up and listen. I love to talk, as you can tell. But you have to be able to listen as a good advisor. Our job, first and foremost, is to listen and absorb, and then contextualize that story and give the best advice possible. So I tell any prospective client, what vibe did you get talking to Elliot Pepper today? Was this good? Because if it doesn't feel right, then we might not be a good fit together. It's not going to be for you. There's a lot of personal trust and transparency that's required. And I can just say, being a few years into the business, and I think this rings true for any entrepreneur, finding it's hard at the beginning when you first start off your own thing, and you might take on clients, customers, patients that might not be the best fit, not really be true to your values, your north, like what your business is trying to be. But hey, like you got a mortgage to pay this month, or rent to pay. So I think it's very important. I think everyone goes through that struggle, but overcoming that struggle and then really doubling down on what it is that makes you good, and make sure that whoever you're working with appreciates that, and that can, that there is that relationship component that exists.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we've covered like your three big buckets that you should be filling financially. We covered how to find a financial advisor, how to determine whether you need a financial advisor, et cetera. A lot of that has to do with your own comfort and your own knowledge base. When I have people applying to True Sports to work here, the biggest questions I get are how much time do we get to spend with our patients? What is the quota? So how many patients do I need to treat a day? How much PTO do I have? What is my starting salary? Very rarely do I get asked about what is your retirement plan that you offer. So give me a couple options and dive into those options of what an employer might be offering that would be attractive to a potential employee, because I feel like they don't even know.
Yeah.
So walk me through 401ks and IRAs and maybe stuff that I'm not even thinking about mentioning.
Yeah, for sure. So this is the way that I kind of frame it. Retirement accounts. So let's just understand like what the purpose of all this is.
Yeah.
A retirement account, why is it there? It's because the government wants to incentivize us to save for our future, right? There's Social Security, but the government doesn't really want to pay for everything. They want us to pay for our future self. So they created these accounts that provide benefits to the people who put money into them so that in the future, you'll have a lot of money to support your retirement. So these accounts can be offered through your employer, or you can open up your own personal retirement accounts. Typically, if there are numbers in the name, it's an employer account. So 401k, 403b, those are the two most common ones. I'd say 401k is probably the most common. That is a retirement account that your employer will offer you. So someone starting their first job, in addition to all those questions about PTO and patients that you have to see, you want to make sure that you're taking care of future you. Ask about what retirement plans do you offer. More likely than not, there's going to be either a 401k or a 403b. You normally see 403bs in nonprofits, governmental organizations, just for the record.
Okay.
But you want to understand it. And then importantly, you want to know what sort of employer match is there, because straight up, that is free money.
Yeah.
If your employer, and it's very common that this happens, you mentioned this at the beginning, if you put in a certain amount, your employer might match that up to a percentage or up to a flat dollar amount. So make sure you at least contribute to that. So that's the world of employer-sponsored accounts, meaning you have to be working for a company that offers it in order to even get in there.
Okay, so 401k. Are there different types of 401ks? Like, walk me through where IRA comes into this, what the word simple IRA means, and then other options under this 401k umbrella.
Okay, great question. So the umbrella really is called retirement accounts. And then under that umbrella, like Rihanna taught us, under her umbrella.
Yes.
Everyone
is going to think you are the coolest financial advisor. Yes.
Come on, especially my kids. 401k, 403b, these are employer accounts. Another one is simple IRA. You sometimes see this. I don't see these as often as the other ones, but sometimes smaller employers will offer it. It's the same concept. It's a retirement account where you put money in, and your employer likely is going to put some sort of match in there as well. The simple 401k, 403b, think I need to be employed by someone else in order to have access to that. Now, the other side of the retirement account umbrella is IRAs as well as Roth IRAs. And Roth is going to come back into the employer discussion. But IRA, so again, think letters. This is like a personal retirement account, meaning I can go to Robinhood, Vanguard, Schwab, open up my own IRA and just put money into there. It's the same idea. There's no match, obviously, because you're just putting your own money in. But in a regular, what's called a traditional IRA, there are tax benefits for putting money in.
Walk me through those just so we understand the idea of why am I putting money away if no one's matching it?
Exactly. It's a great question. And this is the way the government structured these accounts to incentivize us, is they let you save on your taxes. So let's say that your starting salary is $80,000 a year. Your employer does not offer a 401k, but you listen to this podcast and you're like, dude, I got to start saving for retirement. You open up an IRA and you can put in up to, this year, it gets adjusted every year, up to $7,000 into that IRA and invest it. What happens tax time is you tell the IRS, hey, I made $80,000 this year. but I put $7,000 into my IRA. The IRS will let you lower your taxable income. In this case, that would lower it down to $73,000. So instead of paying taxes on $80,000, you're only paying taxes on $73,000. That's a nice benefit.
Yeah.
And it's not like that money went away. That's your money. And then it grows and you don't pay taxes as it grows. You don't have to worry about paying taxes till the back end.
Okay, back end meaning you hit 65.
You hit 65, or technically, don't ask me why. I don't know why, age 59 and a half. That is the earliest age for most situations that you can take money out without paying a penalty.
Okay, so at 59 and a half, you're going to get taxed on whatever is in that account. So tell me why it's better to be taxed then than it is to be taxed now.
The idea is that in your working years, when you're working full time, your tax rate is likely higher than it will be in your retirement
because you're making more money.
Because you're making
while
more
you're
money.
Employed.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you pull that money out, you're going to look at your annual income. It's going to be significantly less because you don't have the salary anymore. Yeah. Okay, so then you're taxed on that, and then money that, like the benefit, the growth of that fund, are you taxed on that differently?
You are not taxed on it any differently.
Okay.
So on the back end, you put in, let's say that's $7,000. And I'm not just making this up. I believe that if a 25-year-old puts $7,000 in today, they can reasonably expect to have just that $7,000 be in the mid six figures for sure. That's without putting another dollar in. So it just shows you the power of investing. But that growth, that entire balance will be taxed at whatever their tax rate is, both the growth and what they put in.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. Then what's the difference between when an employer says we offer a simple plan versus other plans? Like, what are the options there that maybe can differentiate what an employer is offering to the employee?
Yeah. So the employers are going to be offering, again, there could be detail, but basically a 401k, simple IRA, or a 403b. Those are the most common ones. 401k, 403bs have typically higher annual contribution limits. You can put more into
more than the 7,000.
More, yeah. A simple IRA allows you to put in more than 7,000, but not as high as a 401k. And I'm kind of looking up at the ceiling because I don't recall off the top of my head what the simple IRA contribution limits, but it's somewhere in between. It's closer to the 401k limit.
Okay. So as you're picking apart the offer letter from True Sports, you want to know what type of retirement it is, if it's a 401k, if it's a simple, because if it's a 401k, you're going to be able to put away more money potentially versus a simple, which gives you a cap.
Correct.
Right? Does that cover?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Then how do you get to, when you have a client in front of you, this $80,000 a year physical therapist, how do you advise them how much to put into each account? How do you budget for them?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And it goes back to, I think, what I led with, balance. And let's go back to that barbell, is you really have to find the right balance. I think this is also a pitch for working with an advisor who can contextualize your life, because a starting doctor of physical therapy making $80,000, hopefully they'll be making a hell of a lot more than that in maybe 5 or 10 years from now. So the way I would break down a situation like that is bringing in your situation, looking at your current debt situation. So what's your student loan situation look like? Make sure that you have your high yield savings, and then we look at the employer account. Now you can put in close, $23,000 or so into a 401k. That's not necessarily how much you should be putting in when you're making 80 grand and you're just out of college.
Yep.
So what you're going to want to do is find some sort of balance. Typically in a situation like that, I would prioritize first, put into the 401k up to the employer match and stop. Okay. Then get your emergency fund filled up, your high yield savings with 3 months of expenses. So if it takes you $5,000 a month to live, you want at least $15,000 built up in that high yield savings account. Then after that, it's time to get creative and literally paint your financial picture. Like, what do you want it to be? We typically will tell people that you're going to want to understand what your student loan repayment situation is. And then when you're first out of college, more likely than not, you are in a lower tax bracket than you will be in a few years from now. So let's consider yet another layer of retirement accounts, and that is the Roth account.
The hell's that?
Roth is named after a great senator. I don't know his first name, Senator Roth, I believe from Delaware, who created this retirement account. So we walk through why the government incentives of a regular IRA and a regular 401k. I get to lower my taxes today, pay taxes in the future. A Roth works in reverse. You put money into a Roth account, you don't get any tax benefit, but the growth.
Meaning you're still taxed on the Roth. I put in $5,000. I'm taxed on the $5,000 as if it was going into my checking account.
Exactly, but it didn't. So you're like, well, this sucks.
Yep.
Like, why am I doing this? Well, here's why you're doing it. The growth, and then when you take the money out after age 59 and a half, it's tax-free. So who would want to do this? Someone who right now is in a relatively lower tax bracket compared to where there might be, because they don't care so much about the tax benefit. And what it does for people, and I could just say from experience working with pre-retirees and retirees, having a balance of Roth and non-traditional retirement money is huge in retirement because that's tax-free. Another thing, especially for young people, because it's hard to think 3-4 decades in the future, the beauty of a Roth is the contributions that you put in, since you got no tax benefit, you can take that out anytime you want to.
Oh, interesting. You don't have to wait.
You don't have to wait. So I'll have in my own financial plan, as well as working with clients, I'll utilize my Roth IRA as kind of a quasi midterm investment account, not just for the future, maybe, kids, college, weddings, things that in 5, 10, 15 years from now, I might want to save for. The Roth, I'll get that tax-free growth growing, but then I know in my head that those contributions can come out and I can use it to pay for something.
Okay. So no penalty. And it's pretty liquid, right? You get it the next day.
Yeah. Maybe 2 to 3 business days.
Okay, fine.
Depending on
But
where
if
it
you
is.
need it, it's there, as opposed to like you're putting it into a startup. You might not see that for 20 years. You can't just pull it back out. Okay. So that's another way to start to sock away money. Like you said on the barbell, you want to come up with your planner. Dude, this is why a planner is so important, because my head would explode if I'm trying to do this crap myself.
Right.
And maybe this is just me. This is the personal side of personal finance. The psychology of it. Like, I know that if I have a fiduciary, he has set up a proper plan for me. He is taking into account all the crap that I'm giving him, all the information, helps me sleep at night because someone else's eyes are on this thing. So that makes a lot of sense. And that's a good explanation of Roth. Do we need to get into other types of Roth?
There's something around Roth, and then I think we should touch on brokerage, which is that's the last frontier. So in the order of operations of the different investment accounts you should have, we should touch on that. Now, the person making $80,000 a year can just put money directly into the Roth, no problems. But the IRS has rules. They have rules for everything, and they have rules on who can contribute to a Roth. If your income is over certain limits, you can no longer contribute to a Roth IRA. The current limit is definitely higher than $80,000. I think I want to say it's around $220 or something like that. But you phase out of your ability to contribute to a Roth. But there's something called a backdoor Roth IRA.
What is that?
Everyone loves this. I love it. It's a great strategy. So this is a legal loophole. And I believe Congress is like on the record as saying this is a loophole that, yes, it's fine, even though it wasn't the intent of the law. If your income is too high to contribute to a Roth IRA in a direct way, you do what's called the backdoor Roth. What do? You open up a traditional IRA and your regular Roth IRA that you have. Instead of putting $7,000 directly into the Roth, you put $7,000 into the traditional IRA. You don't invest it. You leave it in cash. Then you do what's called a conversion, and you convert your IRA into the Roth IRA.
Dude, that's semantics. Why is that allowed?
It's semantics. I'm not quite sure why it's allowed. Everyone knows that it's semantics. The technical reason why this works and it's efficient is because when you do that conversion, that's a taxable event. So you actually have to file your taxes. And I will say, people who are using TurboTax or kind of self-preparing their taxes do need to be careful about this. You need to include what's called Form 8606 on your taxes. I know, it's the worst, but you have to do it. The reason why is because that conversion is taxable. But think about it. You got no tax benefit by putting the money into the traditional IRA. You were phased out. Your income was too high. So what's called your basis in the IRA is equal to your contribution. So when you convert it, your tax liability is zero because you're taxing money that has already been subject to tax.
Yep.
That's how you get the backdoor Roth IRA going.
Okay, that's a lot. My eyes kind of glassed
Yeah.
over. During when you mentioned the numbers of the tax form, dude, that's when I need a schmuck like you to
Yeah.
handle that. Okay, but at least that kind of carves out a little bit of what a potential employee should be asking, understanding some of the nuances, and obviously having a CFA in their corner helping them along that path just helps clarify this because we get so little business education in graduate school that I think a lot of this is lost. Now, a lot of it's more readily available than it was when I was coming out of grad school, but still, in order to parse through some of the specifics and the semantics, that makes a lot of sense to have a guy like you talk to me about renting an apartment, buying a house. How do I know when I'm ready for each?
That's a great question. So it's a very, I think of all, there's a big debate out there. Is a house an investment or is it a personal expense?
Yeah.
Well, I believe it's a little bit of a combination of both. But at the end of the day, where you're laying your head at night, that's the most important thing. So I do err towards the side of thinking about where you're living, whether you're renting or buying, less as a financial investment and more of a what makes sense for you.
Okay, so the guy making 80 grand, he owes 100 grand. You're filling these buckets like we described. He comes to you and says, do I rent or do I buy?
Yep. So right now you rent and you rent until at least the following kind of check the box
Yep.
items are done. You have your emergency fund fully funded. You've been working at least for a year. So you can kind of be like, yeah, this is my jam. Or you know what? I'm actually going to go back to school and
Do something
become
else.
and do something else so that your career has a little bit of a solid foundation. Your finances have a solid foundation because you have an emergency fund. And then you also want to build up your credit score. So credit score is an important term. Basically, you go to school, you take tests, you get grades A through F, and A means you're top student, F means that you're failing. Credit score is basically your report card on how good of a borrower you are. The problem is when you're young and you just graduated, the banks have nothing to grade you on because you haven't borrowed yet. So you need to build up your credit score. You want to have at least, I recommend, you want to aim for a 700 or above credit score.
Why do I need a good credit score?
Because the interest rate that you're going to pay on any loan that you take out is going to be very closely correlated to your credit score. So the lower your credit score, the higher the interest rate. So it's an inverse correlation. Yep. So you want to have as high of a credit score as possible to get the lowest rate. Think about it from the bank's perspective. Dr. Yoni, you come to me for a loan and are you going to pay me back? And a mortgage loan typically is over a term of 30 years. Can I trust you to pay me back over 30 years? Well, how am I going to know? You say you will, but can I trust you? The credit score is where the bank's going to look to verify if you are an A student borrower or an F student borrower.
Okay, so one way to increase your credit score is by virtue of a mortgage.
That's one way to, yes, that will help build your credit score, but it's kind of like a horse cart situation.
So how do I get a high credit score?
What do you do?
If I don't have a mortgage.
Yeah, it's a great question. Get a credit card. And so I know there are advisors that break the fourth wall here. Okay. I'm not one of those advisors. I do believe in utilizing credit cards responsibly. And my mantra, I say this to my students all the time, be the credit card company's worst customer, meaning get a credit card, use it because a credit card is technically debt. However, if you pay off the balance by the due date, you have no interest. So it becomes free debt.
Yep.
But because it's debt, the banks can now look at your credit score. They can see, oh, Yoni pays off his credit card every single month. He's a good borrower. That will get your credit score raised. So you want to get yourself a credit card. You want to start utilizing it.
And put it on auto pay.
And don't do minimum payment only. Credit card companies can be tricky entities, in my opinion. They won't always make it so clear that you can, how to pay off your credit card. But this is what you want to do. As soon as you get it, you log into whatever company issues you the credit card. So you have a username and password, save it, don't forget it, have the app on your phone and set it so that the balance in full is paid off by the statement date. This is a financial guardrail that will ensure that you won't fall into credit card debt because the credit card company is going to go into your checking account and pull that money out. They're going to do it. And the kicker is that you can get paid to use a credit card through points. Those points can be redeemed for travel or for cash back. So be the credit card company's worst customer. Swipe it, pay it off in full, collect points. That will build your credit score and then get you a lower interest rate when it's time to buy a house.
Okay, so I'm building my credit score before buying the house. I got my credit score up above 700. Do I now want to, is it always prudent at that point? I've been working for 2 years to buy a house, or does it make sense to keep renting?
I think the odds shift dramatically over into starting to think about buying. Another thing I say is generally, because the way buying a house works with a lot of upfront fees that you have to pay, general rule of thumb is 5 years. Do you think, are you comfortable? You think no one knows what the future is going to say, but if you have a reasonable expectation that you'll be there for at least 5 years, that is another thing that would kind of shift you into, okay, maybe it's time to start looking for a home.
Why 5 years?
Because when you first, the way a mortgage works, the way buying a home works is, let's say a house is $300,000. You don't have $300,000 sitting in your checking account. So maybe you have $50,000. Well, actually, let's do a real example. Oftentimes you're going to put 20% down. So 20% of 300,000 is 60,000. So you're going to have 60 grand saved up. And 60,000 is not 300. So where's the rest going to come from? That 240,000 is going to be a loan that you're going to borrow from the bank. What happens is these loans are typically 30-year loans. They could be shorter, but they're typically not shorter than 15 years. So we're talking about a long period of time where you are going to be paying monthly payments, and the amount you pay every month is the same, but the amount that you pay that goes to interest as opposed to actually paying off your balance changes dramatically. And you are almost paying all interest at the beginning of that loan. So in order to really start building up equity and being patient enough to see the value of your home go up so that it becomes a good financial investment, you need to give it some time. So that's why I normally say 5 years.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Great answer. Is the psyche, or the strategy, I should say, the same with your outstanding student debt? Like, how do I pay that off? How quickly do I try to pay that off?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There are similarities and there are differences. The similarities is that you do want to make sure that you can reasonably make the monthly payments. So again, with the house, you got to have the emergency fund, the down payment, and you got to be financially secure to know that you can make those monthly payments. When it comes to your student loan, the first step is to just make sure, just own it. Log in and find out what your current standard repayment plan is. You need to be able to make those payments. And if that means maybe taking a second job or maybe looking for a new position that pays more so that you can do it, I think that is a prudent, responsible thing to do. Then what you want to do, the world of student loans can be very complicated. And in the current today in July 2025, it's even more complicated because there are some technical things going on right now with how different repayment programs work.
Dude, this is how I learned anything. The little I know about finance happened as soon as I walked out of graduate school. I moved the tassel, and like the gift from my dad was like, here are your student loans. And like, I didn't know what the hell that was. And then I went through this consolidation process. So I want you to touch on what that world currently looks like, to kind of put everything into one bucket to understand what it is that you owe. And then walk me through, how do I start chipping away at this?
Yeah, exactly. So generally speaking, when you're borrowing to go to finance your education, that is, I tell my students all the time that there's debt that's connected to an asset and debt that's not connected to an asset. So student loans and mortgages, those are connected to an asset. Importantly, an appreciating asset, because you go to school, get that brain knowledge, go out and make a lot of money. Real estate generally goes up. So the debt that you take out for a car, that's a depreciating asset. Or credit card debt, that is depreciating. That's not going to increase value over time. So student loans specifically, when you're borrowing, there are different places that will lend you money. First place to look is the federal government, because they will offer generally a competitively lower interest rate, because again, it's an incentive. They want to make sure that they have a well-educated citizenry to contribute to society. You can also borrow from private lenders as well. So look at where you've borrowed from, federal versus private loans. Then you want to look at, okay, I'm done with school. What's the repayment landscape that I'm in? There's always kind of the standard repayment option that your loan service provider will start off with, but then there are different programs that you can apply for that can potentially lower or even eradicate the amount of student loans that you have. These tend to be income-based repayment plans. So depending on your income, you can apply, and then your provider will say, okay, this is how much you should owe, but because your income is at this level, instead of owing $1,000 a month, you're only going to owe $700 a month.
That's what? That's if your income's higher or
if
lower?
your income's lower.
Okay.
Income-based meaning the lower your income, the lower your monthly payment would be. So why would someone do this?
The lower my monthly payment, does that mean my principal is lower?
No, it doesn't mean that your principal is lower.
My interest is lower.
No, it just means that the monthly payment itself is lower. So then, like, are you just kicking the can down the road? Yeah. Well, you are in theory, but these plans, and honestly, this is a tough time to be getting into the details, because right now some of these plans are on pause. They're being debated in court right now about how they're going to work. But the idea is that you make these monthly payments and then you achieve what's called loan forgiveness. So depending on the type of plan, the best one is what's called PSLF, Public Service Loan Forgiveness. This means that if you work typically for a nonprofit or charity, which does often mean a lower starting salary, you can get that lower monthly payment. And then I believe if you make 120 qualifying monthly payments, so basically 10 years, the government is just going to forgive it.
That's enough. They say that's enough.
And it's tax-free. This is huge.
What's tax-free?
The loan forgiveness. So
whatever was left?
Yeah.
That what you mean?
Yep, exactly. So another can of worms. Anytime you have a debt forgiven, we might not think this way or believe this way, but in the eyes of the federal government, a forgiven debt is income to the person who owed the money.
So you're taxed on it.
Freaking
bastards. Okay,
Yeah.
So I think Hopkins does this. Speaking to the Baltimore sector, right? Like, you work for Hopkins. If you work for 10 years, you made 120 payments. Is that right? Yep. You made 120 payments. They're going to forgive the rest of your loan. You're going to be at a lower percentage, right? Because you're working for a Hopkins or a nonprofit or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they forgive the rest of the loan, but you're going to be taxed on whatever it is that you were supposed to owe. Right. So just to contextualize and understand that full picture. By the way, I have this conversation with applicants all the time. That's great. And True Sports doesn't currently, although we're looking into it, have some type of loan forgiveness program. Do you really want to be working there for 10 years?
Right. You have to, again, it's all about context and remembering the personal side of this. You have to think about, what do you want to do? There's all these sayings in finance, but they're sayings for a reason, because I think a lot of them do ring true. Is people say, don't put the tax tail ahead of the financial dog, right? Or the investment dog. So deciding, I'm going to take a job that I don't necessarily want to have, taking a salary that's lower than what I would ideally want, because I know I'm going to get this loan forgiveness in the future. Well, number one, you don't know, because 10 years is a long time and shit happens.
Yeah.
Number two is that you might not necessarily come out better ahead. If you went through our whole barbell thing, you might be building up investments that will more than make up for the loans that you had to pay off.
So that's a great way to think about it. Also, I love the context you put it on, and you don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. And is this actually going to behoove you? Because if you're making less money, my spin on that was, I took a job. My first job coming out of graduate school was the highest paying outpatient. I knew I wanted to do outpatient physical therapy. It was the highest paying outpatient physical therapy job I could get. I'm like, this is really prudent. This is really responsible. I'm going to be able to pay things down. I'm going to be able to pay my wife back for putting me through graduate school, crap like that, right? Little did I know, I made that decision over a few $1,000s. That was my highest pay. How much was the pain of that first job actually worth to me? We're talking about pennies a day when looking over the span of a year. You got to try to whittle it down to say, where am I going to be happiest? And what's my earning potential? If I'm working for Hopkins at this lower rate, yeah, it's going to be good in 10 years, but can I make a whole bunch of money? And would I be better off, I don't know, starting my own, working at True Sports, etc., where my ceiling is much higher, I can make much more money, then I'm not going to worry about the proverbial tax tail.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I think this gets into another part of what people should be thinking about, and that is the concept of flexibility and freedom within your financial plan. So Here's the thing. We're talking about buying a house and, maybe buying a car or other assets.
We're going to get into a car in a second. Yeah.
So if you think about a house, you'll say, well, this is going to be a great financial investment because it's going to go up in value in the future. So I'm going to go buy a very, very expensive house that's really nice and beautiful, but that will leave less money for me to put into my Roth IRA, my backdoor, or my brokerage account. Here's the thing. You cannot take a brick out of your house to go pay for an unexpected bill or to cover a really nice vacation that you want to take. However, you can draw money out of a brokerage account. Yeah. We learned the rules for a Roth IRA and do that. So financial assets, which I look at as your investment accounts, there's a tremendous amount of utility. So again, taking this job at Hopkins, where yes, there is a financial benefit down the road, but what you're leaving on the table is the ability to build up true liquid wealth that gives you flexibility and freedom when you're young and you want to do stuff. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure in the sports PT world, this is very relatable because the older you get, the more injury prone, the less people might be into doing things. So I went skydiving in my 20s. I just turned 40. I'm not going skydiving again.
Yeah, you should. But but that makes a lot of sense. And like looking at the whole picture and having these conversations is imperative. Like that's why I wanted to get you on here, because I think there's also a lot of paralysis. Hey, we don't know this stuff, so I'm not going to spend anything. You and I have had a lot of conversations about that, but trying to like clarify it to understand what you're giving up, what you're gaining, etc. And I think like the explanation of all these investment vehicles, these saving strategies, but also these spending strategies are really important. Okay, let's go to car.
Yeah, we've bonded.
Yes,
many an early morning and late
night. We hate
cars. Yes.
Because they're bad investments.
Right.
Okay, what does the therapist, the 26-7-year-old therapist, need to know about taking their $80,000 salary and how do I get to work every day? Yep. Do I buy? Do I lease? Assuming those are your only options. Mm-hmm. Do I Uber?
Yep. Great question. You ideally, I'm going on record, okay, for everybody here. All right. I believe that a car's primary purpose is to get you from point A to point B. And anything beyond that it's doing for you is a luxury premium that you're paying for. So having said that, I believe in buying used. I believe buy a used car, a good used car, drive it into the ground. I happen to personally not be a big car person. I have family members and I have friends and clients that are big car people and they do it. And so when we're working together, we incorporate it into the plan in a responsible way. Having said that, a person just graduating, $80,000, still managing, with student debt, just figuring things out. I don't think it's financially responsible at that time to go get the BMW. It is something to save up for and plan for accordingly. But right now, go buy. I recommend buying used as the way to go for sure. I want to say maybe a little story that I think really helps bring this home. I was talking to a client. It was
just for the record, what do you drive, Pepper?
2007 Hyundai Sonata, baby.
That's, by the way.
It's at the mechanic right now. So there are
pluses and minuses.
There are pluses and minuses.
We talked about interviewing financial advisors. I think that's an important question to ask your financial advisor. What do they drive? Why do they drive it? And then what is your car ownership experience? That's what I want to know from my financial advisor. Like, how long have you been driving, the Beamer, if that's what you're driving, and how did you get to that point? But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a very, very good point. It's also context is everything. Here's the thing. I believe Morgan Housel says this, and if we're
Psychology of Money.
Psychology. There's tons of great stuff out there. He says something so succinct. Wealth is what you don't see. So you and I might be standing outside and we're going to watch two BMWs drive past us. We know nothing about the drivers of that BMW. One of them might be worth $5 billion and can afford to literally buy the BMW corporation and is driving that BMW. The other person might be just scraping by on a starting salary and up to their eyeballs in debt. They're both driving the same thing. Their wealth situation is so different, but we don't get to see that. So that's really, really important. I think it's very important for people to keep that in mind. So this is a great story that really framed it for me very well, is that it's been proven that kind of humans, just like from human psychology, that we have this amazing ability to kind of recalibrate back to our base level of happiness after we have shocks, both upwards and downwards. I read this from Dan Ariely, another great behavioral economist at Duke University. And so if you...
Despite him being affiliated with Duke.
Despite, yes, that's true. I should not have said that.
Yeah.
We're not filming in North Carolina.
No.
So we have this ability to snap back. So if you think about, let's say you are a car person, you want to have this cool experience of driving an amazing car. Instead of laying out the money for this luxury car, this fancy car that you're going to drive for a while, and you know that you're going to recalibrate back to your base level of happiness after a couple months of driving that car, instead, keep a used car that you drive day to day. But when you go on vacation, upgrade. Go for the crazy luxury car on Turo or at the rental counter, and then get that experience. You will derive just as much happiness during that experience, but instead of paying $80,000 and then having happiness for 2 months and then still being stuck with an $80,000 expense in your life, you can spend $1,000 or $2,000, have that same level of happiness, and then, come back and not be sitting. You have basically a $78,000 financial savings in that situation. So I think that story really hit home for me.
Love that. Okay, let's close on this. What is one financial mindset shift or aha moment you wish every physical therapist could have early in their career that would dramatically change their financial trajectory?
I think it is just appreciating, as hard as this is to do, the power of time. Everyone is looking for the shortcut to wealth, or the shortcut. Think about an athlete who's injured might want to find shortcuts to get back onto the field, but shortcuts often lead to disasters, both on the field and in your finances. So the aha moment is, I think, realizing what the power of time does for your financial wealth. I ran a quick scenario before this interview because I love sharing this with people. Someone who's 25 years old starts socking away $400 a month into the stock market, whether in their retirement account or in a brokerage account. So they do that for 20 years. So from 25 to 45, and then they stop. They don't put another dollar in. When they are 65, they're going to have over $800,000 in that account, and they only put in $96,000. Let's say you waited. Let's say you waited until you were 45 to start saving. So you just didn't put away that $400 a month. So you save for the same 20 years. You put away $96,000. But the person who started at 45 to 65 is only going to have $208,000 in their account. That is a $600,000 financial consequence. So invest early, invest often, and it doesn't have to be a lot. You can start with very, very small contributions. In my own life, when I first graduated, my salary was pretty low. I had a lot of competing debts and expenses in my life. But the thing I learned was to lean into the discipline and behavior. And even if you're putting away $10 a month, $20 a month, do something, because the power of time, that's the aha moment. The earlier you start, the better off you'll be.
That's a great way to end. It just strikes me that there's so much psychology in this. And that harkens back to something you said earlier in the conversation, which is so much of what you do as a successful financial advisor is listen and understand the psychology of who it is you're talking to, what their goals and aspirations are. And then, and only then, can you kind of set up this plan moving forward to bring and breed success. I think that's really powerful. Okay. Tell all the amazing sports PTs around the world how they can find Elliot Pepper.
Awesome. Thank you. So you can find us at northbrookfinancial.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn under Elliot Pepper. We also are on YouTube and Instagram at Northbrook Financial. We post a lot of videos, a lot of content, try to give short snippets that are helpful and actionable and a little bit cheesy. But, the point is to drive some helpful information home. So
dude, that's what I want.
Give us a follow.
Dude, that's what I want in a financial planner. I want a little bit of cheesiness.
Yeah.
Like the big suits and the expensive cars, that just makes me nervous. So I appreciate what you're putting out there. I appreciate your time in this. I learned a ton, and I have so many more questions. Good thing I'll see you just about every day at 6:30 in the morning.
That's right.
But guys, go and follow Elliot. Obviously, wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience. Thank you guys so much for listening. Bye-bye.